Have you ever walked into a room filled with powerful, successful people and wondered what they noticed about you first? It probably wasn't your designer outfit, it wasn't your job title, and it definitely wasn't how impressive you tried to sound. Because sometimes the most revealing moment happens when nothing happens. A pause, a silence, a question that seems almost too ordinary, and without realizing it, you're being observed. And here's the uncomfortable part. You may already be revealing whether you're comfortable with yourself before you've even finished saying hello. In this video, I'm going to reveal the 6 quiet tests people use when they first meet you, and more importantly, how to respond to each one without trying to impress anyone. Test 1. The silence test. You're at an elegant charity gala. You've just been introduced to someone influential. You exchange names, a few pleasantries, and then there's a 2-second pause. Nothing is wrong, they're simply letting the conversation breathe, but suddenly you feel the pressure to say something, so you start talking, you explain what you do, then you mention a recent project, then you add who you worked with, then you realize you've been talking for 30 seconds without taking a breath. Here's what just happened. You weren't filling the conversation, you were filling your own discomfort. In rooms where people are accustomed to reading social cues, that tiny pause can reveal whether someone is comfortable letting a conversation unfold naturally or feels compelled to control every second of it. And this is why the first quiet test isn't really about what you say, it's about what you do when you have nothing to prove. So next time there's a pause, don't rush to rescue it. Smile. Stay present. Let the other person speak when they're ready. Test 2. The what do you do test. At a private dinner, someone turns to you and asks a deceptively simple question. So, what have you been working on lately? It sounds harmless, but watch what happens next. One person might say, I've been working on a new project in global sourcing. It's been challenging, but I'm really enjoying it. Simple, natural. Another person might immediately launch into a 5-minute explanation. They mention the size of their company, their impressive clients, the city they recently traveled to, the famous person they met, the importance of their project, and somehow a casual question has turned into a presentation. Here's the trap. The more desperately you try to make your life sound impressive, the less impressive you may appear. The question was never really about how many achievements you could list. It was about whether you could talk about your life naturally without turning the conversation into a performance. The difference isn't ambition, it's emotional tone. Are you sharing who you are? Or are you trying to convince someone that you're important? People who are comfortable with themselves don't need every sentence to increase their perceived value. They can talk about their work without turning it into a resume. Test 3. The disagreement test. Now the conversation turns to business. You make an observation. Someone across the table calmly says, I'm not sure I agree with that. That's it. No insult, no attack, just a different perspective. But suddenly, you feel the urge to defend yourself. You explain your point again, then you add another example, then another. Your voice gets slightly faster. You're no longer discussing an idea. You're protecting your position. And this is where people reveal something much deeper. Can you disagree without feeling personally challenged? A composed response might simply be, that's interesting. I hadn't considered it from that angle. You don't have to surrender your opinion. You simply don't need to fight for your identity through it. Because confident people can change their minds. They can listen. They can say, I see your point, and then move on. Test 4. The attention test. You're halfway through telling a story at a sophisticated dinner when you notice something subtle. The room's attention begins to drift. One person glances away, someone else starts a side conversation. The energy shifts slightly, and you notice. What do? Many people instinctively turn up the performance. They become louder, their stories get bigger, they add more dramatic details. They try harder to pull everyone's attention back. But here's what people with real social composure understand. You don't have to win every second of the room. At that charity dinner, if the conversation naturally moves away from your story, you don't chase it. You smile, you listen, you let someone else have the spotlight. And when the conversation eventually comes back to you, you're still completely relaxed. That communicates something powerful. I don't need constant attention to feel secure. Test 5. the status dropping test. At an exclusive networking event, the conversation turns to your career. Suddenly, you have an opportunity to mention the impressive people and places connected to your work. Maybe you know a famous executive. Maybe you recently stayed at an exclusive resort. Maybe you've worked with a prestigious company. Should you mention it? Maybe. But ask yourself one question first. Am I sharing this because it's relevant or because I want them to know I'm important? Because the subtle difference between confidence and status seeking isn't what you mention, it's why you need to mention it. Someone asks, "How was your trip to London?" And you naturally say, "Wonderful, I loved the architecture and the food." That's conversation. But if every answer somehow becomes, "Oh yes, I was there for a meeting with the CEO of," people may start noticing a pattern. You don't need to hide your accomplishments. Just don't make every conversation carry their weight. Test 6, the waiting test. You finish making your point at dinner and then nothing. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. What happens inside you? Do you start wondering, did that sound stupid? Should I explain what I meant? Maybe I should say something else. And before you know it, you're talking again. You add another sentence, then another clarification, and suddenly you're explaining something that didn't need explaining in the first place. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can say after making your point is absolutely nothing. Try this instead. Finish your sentence. Pause. Keep your expression relaxed. Let the other person process. They may simply be thinking, they may be choosing their words, they may have nothing to add. And that's okay. You don't have to manage their reaction. You don't have to immediately explain yourself. You don't have to fill every empty space. Confidence can tolerate unfinished moments. The deeper test. Emotional steadiness. And now we get to the real test underneath all 6. It's not silence, it's not status, it's not conversation, it's emotional steadiness. Because at a single dinner, all 6 situations can happen. There's a pause, someone disagrees with you, someone doesn't react to your story, someone asks a surprisingly ordinary question, someone else gets more attention than you, and you remain the same person through all of it. That's the quality people remember, not perfection, stability. The deeper question is whether you can remain comfortable without constantly managing how you're being perceived. Think about the difference. One person walks into the room thinking, "How am I coming across?" Another walks in thinking, "Who can I learn something from?" One is monitoring herself, the other is experiencing the room, and that difference changes everything. How to pass the test without trying. So how do you actually develop this? Not by pretending to be mysterious, not by speaking less just to appear sophisticated, and definitely not by copying the behavior of wealthy people. Instead, practice these 5 things. First, let a pause exist. Don't automatically rescue silence. Second, answer questions simply. You don't need to turn every answer into an achievement story. Third, let people disagree with you. You can listen without surrendering your perspective. Fourth, don't chase attention. If the conversation moves somewhere else, let it. And fifth, stop negotiating your worth in real time, because you don't need someone's immediate reaction to decide whether what you said was valuable. Because the moment you stop trying to convince people that you belong, you become much more comfortable actually belonging. And that is the paradox. The people who appear most secure aren't necessarily doing more. Sometimes they're simply doing less. So the next time you walk into a charity gala, a luxury dinner, a business event, or simply a room full of accomplished people, remember this. You don't have to impress everyone. You don't have to dominate the conversation. You don't have to prove how successful you are. Pay attention to yourself. Can you sit comfortably in silence? Can you hear an opposing opinion without becoming defensive? Can you let attention move away from you? Can you talk about your accomplishments without needing them to define your worth? Because people may forget exactly what you said, but they'll remember how comfortable you seemed being yourself. And perhaps that's the quietest status signal of all. You don't need to prove you belong in the room. You simply behave like you already belong there. If this changed the way you think about first impressions, subscribe to the Mind Upgrade, because sometimes the most powerful social skills are the ones nobody teaches you. If you want more videos that help you build a stronger mindset, overcome challenges, and upgrade the way you think, make sure you subscribe to the Mind Upgrade.